Welcome, everyone, to the Cyber Physics Podcast, where we unravel the complex web of cybersecurity through the lens of its foundational principles. I'm your host, and today, we embark on an intellectual journey that mirrors the intricacy of physics itself. Joining us are two remarkable experts, Ranghan Venkatraman and Dean Sapp, as we delve into cyber physics in essence.
Dean Sapp. I'm the Senior Vice President of Cybersecurity at Filevine. We're a legal software, case management, essentially the full back office for the legal vertical. So kind of what Salesforce is to salespeople, Filevine is to lawyers and law firms.
Fantastic. Very good to meet you. I'm Ranghan Venkatraman. I head up three companies. I run a company called Resilience that focuses on AI, Pinnacle that focuses on cybersecurity, and Curious, that's an edtech brand. So really good to meet you. We're very passionate about cybersecurity and how AI can be leveraged. We are basically working on products in cybersecurity, and of course, love to hear about some of your challenges on a different call. But I think maybe I'll start with given the events of 23. How do you foresee 24 being evolving? Whether it's the nature of the business that you're in, as well as where do you see the threat landscape sort of evolving, and what do you think some of the key priorities should be for maybe yourself or the likes of you who operate in the industry?
Sure. Well, I would say that 2023 brought the AI movement to the forefront, and there will be two types of customers or two types of companies: those that embrace it, or those that are kind of left behind because their competitors have embraced it and found ways to use it. So it really will be sort of a decision pendulum for companies, and those that learn how to manage it, learn how to support it, learn how to secure it. Those are the companies that are going to thrive, and those that don't will just simply be left behind or will be exploited because of it. I mean, we're already seeing AI generated attacks that are sophisticated phish, sophisticated malware that's being modified, and so we know it's being used by adversarial groups. And so any business that doesn't plan and act accordingly is going to have some real challenges.
So, I mean, our view in this is that AI, has turned into a new operating system. See, at the core of it, it if you take even OpenAI's next pivot, the next pivot is for it to actually behave and do many tasks for you. So earlier it was about parsing words, parsing code. Now it's about actually taking action, in the form of automation where it sort of completes the task. So the interesting thing that we are seeing is that it is the same tools that can be used to defend against threats that are the same tools that can be used to attack. This scenario, poses an interesting thing because both parties have the same tools, and it's sort of, is it a David and Goliath, or is it a Goliath versus a Goliath? Or, so I think that is what we are basically seeing in this transition where, and of course, if you are a David, you have to seek inspiration from that real story where you use a slingshot, to protect yourself. But as such, one of the things that we see, across customers, prospects, and whatnot, that cybersecurity is still not a game. I look at it in three levels. One is play to lose, play to participate, and play to win. So if you look at it from where you are saying, right? I mean, if those that perhaps don't want to embrace it, are likely to be left behind. It's, in other words, it's play to lose. But then let's even talk about companies that are playing to participate, because if you really look at the job of the CISO, it's gotten increasingly difficult. It's difficult because the companies are not necessarily willing to make the level of investment that is needed. And a lot of the times it's a checkbox that is meant to appease the board. And The reality is you're just participating. And when you participate, you can only take the journey so far. But if it's a play to win, you're looking at a story which is completely different because you're taking actions that will allow you to at least stay ahead of the bad actor, which requires you to make certain types of investments. And that's a hard conversation to have, because how much is enough, and how much is good enough, and how much is the right level. So that's the journey we are seeing. Your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I would tend to agree with you. I feel like any CISO that is just checking the box with the board is actually, putting himself personally or herself personally at risk because of recent cases where the chief security officer was perceived to being hiding or to withholding information. So I agree that it can never be just a checkbox. It needs to be transparent with the board. When I meet with our board, we have essentially letter grades A, B, C, D, F, and we try to communicate how we are doing as a department or how the company is doing, and to get candid feedback. And fortunately, boards understand not everything is going to be rosy. You're going to have departments, maybe sales are down, and they take that information and they try to make decisions on how to improve it, or maybe sales are record high, and those are generating other problems that have to be addressed by the board. But the boards that I've met with usually are very bright individuals. They want to know all of the facts so that they can make good business decisions. So when I hear conversations like that, I do get a little concerned that there are individuals that are not sharing the good and the bad. Right? You might have successfully stopped 35 attacks, but you know what? There may have been an event that you didn't stop, and the whole intent of being able to share that information is to make sure that you can get the investments that you need. And again, it's always a challenge because everyone's tight on their budgets. They're trying to use their funds that are limited wisely. So it is important for the CISO to communicate risks in a broad set of areas. You have to cover your potentially your privacy risks that are changing, your actual financial risks that are impacted by a data breach. At the end of the day, most CFOs are really concerned about profit volatility. And profit volatility comes when you have unexpected events. They could be a cyber event, they could be, a catastrophic failure at a manufacturing plant or something of that nature. So I agree that firms and companies need to decide the level of engagement. And I do think that AI makes every David capable of fighting off a Goliath because it is very powerful technology. But you have to know who your adversaries are. And if you don't have a good handle of who your adversaries are and the techniques that they're using to try and breach your defenses, then you're probably in trouble.
So interesting. Here's what I mean. Here's a link to how we have taken that problem head on. So what we normally do is that we actually map out an enterprise, and we look at the threat landscape, whether you're talking about IOCs, you're talking about APTs, AETs, and sort of match that threat landscape to the IOCs and APTs that could target it. So the way we look at it is that we say that, hey, you have the known known all the way to unknown unknown. So if you take a known known, you're talking about IOCs that are in the wild, but people know about it, and they probably may be known for their notoriety or how long they've been in existence. And then you have what I call known unknown, which is essentially ones that are trending that you should pay attention to. And then of course you can now go to unknown known, which is where you have that it's almost like a car key in your house that is in your house, but you just don't know where to
Right.
find it. Case in point, be an APT as an example, or an AAT. Then, last but not the least, which is the most challenging, is the unknown unknown, which is where you may be having issues that are trending in the Amazon forest equivalent, and you have to track it. So what we tend to focus on is how do we take these components and map the enterprise to those areas. So this way, we have some method, a mental model, other words, to actually go after it in a way that you can actually do something about it. In a way that you can prioritize your actions based on what intel you have. And we found that to be very, very effective because we can even tell an enterprise that, hey, you could be targeted from this APT or AET group based on the speciality that they have, because many of them actually specialize in a type of, a malware attack. And a very common thing. And the other thing that we also see is a lot of the times it's not actually about being super intelligent. It's actually about being less stupid. Case in point, you have assets, that very many companies can't simply reconcile between their CMDB all the way through the patch management tool or the vulnerability management tool. And then you have these blind spots which can easily be closed. And then you don't need AI, you don't need a lot of intelligence to do that kind of work. But then if you actually make sure you protect all of them, you're generally okay. Take the example of a company like T-Mobile that got access through the router. And very many companies, use default passwords for their, printers, for their, video equipments and whatnot. Gives you beautiful entry points into the entire, landscape. Network segregation, all of these things that people can easily do aren't being done. So in a lot of ways, we've sort of lowered the bar for a hacker, which means that the barrier to becoming a hacker becomes less and less, because it's not like the stakes are so high that enterprises are operating at such a level of defenses that you need to be that better. So at the end of the day, you're dealing with warfare, where one has a leg up over the other. And if you look at it, if a hacker says, hey, you know what, all I need is to find an exploit in a Wi-Fi network, or one device that doesn't have an EDR, I can enter it, then you basically, make that so easy, where all you just needed to do was just be less stupid about it.
Yes, I wouldn't call it stupid, but I would say it is all about security hygiene. AI has made a method or increased the speed at which attacks can occur, but many of the attacks are still going after the same weaknesses like you discussed. Open ports to the internet that are bypassing firewall rules, unpatched web servers or unpatched systems that are publicly facing, right? A lot of the breaches, the large ones, I mean, the Equifax breach several years ago was a perfect candidate. It was public exposure, known exploits that are over 6 months old. So when we do a risk profile, we look at, is there a public exploit? Is it being used in the wild? Do we have any systems that are vulnerable to that exploit? And are we seeing attempts? Right? You have sort of this culmination of a weakness, an opportunity, active exploitation. And then you can look at and make decisions on priority and essentially raise that up to the business to make sure things are remediated. But the attacks that I see are certainly coming faster because of AI. The phishing emails are getting better. The grammar, the sophistication are improving. But the traditional techniques to stop a phishing attack are still working. I mean, DKIM, DMARC, SPF, Start TLS, a lot of the email capabilities still will block unknown domains or unexpected domains or unexpected emails. They will still be effective at stopping, any of the substitution attacks with, the domains that are lookalikes. So it is back to hygiene, discipline, and being able to use the time and your engineers or your resources effectively, because the attacks are still coming the same way, and the attackers are still, like you said, they're looking for the stupid victims where they just haven't done the basics. They just aren't protecting themselves from the regular attacks, and it's a real problem because it just comes down to, it's that analogy. You don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun everybody else, and the bear will take one of them down.
There's a saying similar to that. Either an enterprise has already been hacked or is going to get hacked, and you have a choice to be the third one, which is you have outmaneuvered a hack every
Yeah.
single time. So with that said, maybe three tips for a listener, from your end would really go tackle
Sure.
this.
I would say that the three most common breach events that I've seen, I also have a small cybersecurity consulting company, and we provide protections and advice to a lot of small businesses and even large enterprises. But the three risk areas that are still the most common are email fraud, often called business email compromise or CEO fraud. So making sure that your email protections are in place. And one of the simplest ways for someone to do that is to ensure that there is a certificate that is representative of your internal email senders. So all email within your company is essentially verified so that you don't ever get that CEO fraud or CEO spoof environment or kind of risk area. So protecting your emails is number one, because once you have an email compromise, that leads to number two, which is wire fraud, SWIFT fraud, or some type of financial transaction fraud, where an attacker will access someone's email address. They will watch for financial transactions like closing on a house or a large deal where you're buying a large piece of equipment. They will sit there and watch until they see an opportunity to change routing instructions or wiring instructions, and that's when they will strike. And it'll typically be on like a long weekend or a holiday, and their goal is to get into the email thread, and then any responses from the recipient get placed into a folder structure somewhere in their email client where it's not visible, or it'll auto delete or something like that. So the actual email user has no idea that their account's being used for this wire fraud. And so there's a lot of ways to verify. You just pick up the phone, call someone. Are these wiring instructions actually legit? Right? We've been using this bank and this establishment for 20 years. Look for changes like that, right? So the phishing fraud, the wire fraud, and then the third vector that's most common is just unpatched systems that are public, that are being exploited. So I just tell my customers, focus on the basics, right? But I will add one more, and that's been making sure that everyone has two-factor authentication turned on for every account that they care about, because they should take the approach, if you don't have two-factor on that account, you're okay with that being used by other people in an unauthorized way. Because without strong authentication, and again, not an SMS text, you should be using Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator or one of those other one-time codes with in conjunction with a strong passphrase. That's a combination that will keep most attackers out of the system. They'll just move somewhere else where it's easier to get in.
No, thank you for that. That was very informative, and I'm very sure that the readers would love this. Really practical advice. So thank you for joining this podcast. I will certainly have my team reach out to you for a follow-on, just to figure out if there are ways for us to collaborate. There seems to be many areas where we sort of sync, and I'll let them take care of that, and hopefully we can meet again soon, and then maybe we can have other versions of the podcast continue
Would
in
love
other
to, love
forms.
to.
So
Thank you
thank you
very
so
much for having me. And if you ever want to have AI discussions, we have 6 AI products now, and it's going to be very, very fascinating in 2024. So again, thank you for your time. All right, bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
As we wrap up this enlightening episode of the Cyber Physics Podcast, we want to express our deep appreciation to our insightful guests, Ranghan Venkatraman and Dean Sapp, for sharing their wisdom with us today. Cyber physics, in essence, has indeed brought us closer to understanding the intricate forces that govern our digital world. We hope you've gained valuable insights and inspiration to navigate the ever-evolving landscape of cybersecurity. Stay connected, stay informed, and remember, the essence of cyber physics is ever present in our connected reality. Until next time, keep exploring and seeking the equilibrium between innovation and safeguarding. Thank you for joining us on this captivating journey.